Hello, this is Domenico with Easynomics, and this will be another Paper 3 type practice in the context of the production possibilities curve, as it may appear perhaps on a Paper 3 type of exam. This video will be part of the Circular Flow Production Possibilities playlist, which is the first unit of IB Economics, and it will also be included in the Paper 3 practice playlist. So we can see that there's some quantitative questions, again, part of the Paper 3 playlist and this first unit playlist. So let's take a look. So here we have a question, and we've been provided a figure, a diagram illustrating the production possibilities curve. So here it says figure 3 illustrates the production possibilities for wheat, as we can see measured on the y-axis, and rockets in China as measured on the x-axis. Resources in China are assumed to be fully employed, so we're producing along the PPC curve, which represents productive efficiency, full employment, and no waste of our inputs or resources. So let's look at questions C, D, and E. And I've chosen C, D, and E because there's a previous video that will be linked below that's very similar to this type of question with a different percentage, a different starting point. So this is just another practice. Assuming an initial production of 74 million tons of wheat, calculate the opportunity cost for China if the production of rockets is to be increased by 80%. So I'm going to ask you to pause the video and consider how you would answer this question. Pause the video and try out your workings, and then we'll double check your work in just a moment. Pause the video now. All right, so let's take a look and see what you came up with. I would encourage you that as you read questions, that you kind of underline some key points being made within the question. So here it says, assuming an initial production of 74 million, so this is going to be our starting point of wheat. Calculate, we got to figure out what's the opportunity cost for China if the production of rockets is to be increased by 80%. So let's first identify this initial production point, 74 million tons of wheat. So here we have on the y-axis wheat production going from 0 to 10, 20, 30, 40. And we can see that we have intervals of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 spaces between 70 and 80. So 10 divided by 5 means that the value of each interval is 2. So here's 72, here's 74. So I'm going to look for that initial point. And the initial point is right here. All right, so I'm going to label that point A to highlight that's my initial production point. And let's go and use our ruler to identify that we are producing 72 million tons of wheat, and the quantity of rockets here we can see is 2, 3, 4, 3. So I'm going to mark that. That's my initial production of 74 million tons. And here we have 3 rockets being produced. Okay. So we have to calculate the opportunity cost of increasing rocket production by 80%. So we're going to increase rocket production by 80%. So let's figure that out. Let's do some calculations. So let's remember that 80% as a decimal value, we can take 80 divided by 100%, and that gives us a decimal value of 0.8, which I'm going to need. So I'm starting with 3 rockets, and I want to know what 80% of that is. So I can multiply 3 rockets times 0.8. And that tells me that that's 2.4 rockets. So we get an additional 2.4 rockets. And I'm going to increase it by that 80%, but I'm adding that to the original 3. So that's going to be plus the original 3 rockets, and that's going to take me to 5.4 rockets that is going to be produced by increasing production by 80%. Another way to calculate this is you can take, and probably a faster way is take, that 3 rockets multiplied by itself again. So that's multiplied by 1, 3 times 1, or so we're going to include that initial 3 there, plus the additional 80%. So 3 times 1.8 gives us 5.4 rockets. Okay, so that's going to be where we're going to end up by increasing production by 5.4 rockets. So I got to look for that point. So here's 4, here's 5, 5.4, 2, 4. So here's 4. I'm going to look on the PPC curve and see what's the quantity of wheat production at that point. And here we are. So I'm going to mark that as point B. We have 2, 4. So that's approximately right. So here we have 5.4. Here is 2, 4. And here we get wheat output at 246, 5.56. Okay, so again, we can see that we have increased rocket production from 3 to 5.4. That's an 80% increase. And now I need to calculate what's the decrease or the lost opportunity in wheat production. And then I can answer that question. Okay, so that's going to work out to my initial wheat production of 74 million tons of wheat. And now it's been reduced down to 56 million tons of wheat. And that's going to work out to 18 million tons. So there's my opportunity cost. I've decreased wheat production by 18 million tons. So to answer that question, all right, the opportunity cost, the opportunity cost of increasing rocket production by 80%, which is taking us from 3 rockets to 5.4 rockets. The opportunity cost of increasing rocket production by 80%, going from 3 to 5.4, is 18 million tons of wheat. We've lost that production as we reallocate resources away from wheat production towards rocket production. So we want to think as a ratio to increase rocket production, right? To increase rocket production by 2.4. Here we see 2.4 increase in rocket production. To increase rockets by 2.4, we've lost negative 18 million tons of wheat. Okay, and I can put those values in here so I can visually see what's happening. So here we have a plus 2.4 increase in rocket production, and here we have a decrease of negative 18 million. It's going down by 18 million right over there. Okay, so we've answered that question. Part D, state 2 assumptions of the model. So here's question C. Let's go to question D. State 2 assumptions of the model. So the IB can test our understanding and knowledge of the assumptions of different models like the PPC. I'm just going to go ahead and list all of the assumptions, and then we just need 2. So assumptions of the PPC. Think about what those assumptions would be. Pause the video and think about that, and let's check your answers. Pause the video now. All right, so what would your assumptions of the model be? They can include 1, we're going to assume full employment of all factors of production, of all resources, of all inputs. That's an assumption of the model. Oh, there's my phone. Number 2, we assume productive efficiency. in the employment of resources in the employment of factors of production resources. And that, in fact, is stated here. We assume resources are fully employed, okay? Number 3, we're also going to assume that there is a fixed quantity of resources, a fixed quantity of land, labor, capital resources. Number 4, we're going to assume that there's the fixed quality of resources. The quality of land, labor, capital is not changing. That's an assumption. And number 5, which I'll put over here, we assume fixed technology. The technology is not innovating or changing. Fixed technology. So you should be mindful of these 5, but the question is just asking us to state 2 of them. So you can state any 2 of these 5 and demonstrate your knowledge of the assumptions of the model. Great. Let's move on to the last question. Question E. All right, state 2 factors that will cause the PPC curve for China to shift outwards. So what's going to cause a shift? Very important. Let's draw a line here. Question E. What would your answer to that question be? Pause the video and think about how you would answer that. Okay, so what would your answer be? Easy ones to come up with is I constantly tell my students, don't forget these here. That any change in technology, any change in the quantity of resources, any change in the quality of resources is going to cause the PPC curve to shift outward or inward. And that's also going to transfer to macroeconomics when we talk about the shifts in the LRAS curve or the Keynesian aggregate supply curve. So if we can remember quantity, quality, fixed technology, then I can just state 2 of those. I'll put 3. So here we can say that there could be a change in the quantity of resources, and that's going to cause a shift. And to cause it to shift outwards, we can assume that there's an increase in the quantity of resources, more land, labor, capital resources. That causes more production of output. So the PPC curve would shift outwards as a result. Another one could be a change in the quality of resources. Perhaps with your human capital resources, your labor resources, they go from low skilled to mid skilled to high skilled. You've improved the quality of those resources, and labor can now produce more. It's more productively efficient thanks to investments in education. And last, any change in technology. Innovations in technology, acquiring new technology will improve the productive capacity of the economy, cause the PPC curve to shift outwards. Okay? And that's it. I might do one more practice question here where I might change up the percent here to test your knowledge of how you can, if you understand how to create a decimal value from a percent, maybe a different starting point so that you can calculate an opportunity cost. I'll probably do one more video doing that. And that's it. If you have any questions, feel free to comment those questions below. And don't forget to subscribe and to like. Thank you so much.